A highly eventful episode. We are reminded why this show is so great in a fairly low-key episode that focuses less on the monsters and more on the characters and reminds us why we love the characters as much as we do. Hey guys, Cameron for Stranger Things, Season 1, Episode 6, The Monster, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode for a couple of reasons, mainly because of the cliffhanger at the end of Episode 5. I thought there was an awesome cliffhanger, I thought there was an awesome way to get us to the next episode, but also because we only have 3 episodes left, and I was really looking forward to seeing what was going to happen, and especially, like I said, a lot of storylines are starting to come together, and it really is starting to seem like everything's really starting to come to a halt. By the end of this episode, people like someone like Joyce and Hopper know as much, are starting, well, at least are starting to know as much as the boys do. But Nancy and Jonathan have, a lot to do in this episode. And for me, I know a lot of people are saying this episode was slow or whatever. I'm completely disagree. For me, this was the best episode the show has given us. And I'll tell you why. Mainly because it reminds us of how great this cast really is and how great this show really is. Because I've said it before, the show is not about the monster. The show is not about all this sci-fi stuff. Even though it's in there, I don't think that's the main theme of the show. The theme of the show is grief and teamwork and how to move past embarrassment and things like that. That's a big part of this episode. And what I loved about this episode is that it deals with less of the actual monster and more of the human type monsters that all of our characters are facing, whether it's Nancy and Jonathan with Steve, or 11 and the boys with, them kind of with each other. But let's get in this episode because there really is a lot to talk about. I really do love this episode overall. Starting off with the beginning, which I have to say, by far, I think is the best opening we've had in this show since the premiere. I love this opening. As we know, Nancy, it seemed like she was abducted. I really thought that we were going to cut to Nancy being in the Upside Down because Jonathan's calling out to her. I thought we were going to see her in the Upside Down, but she's just like right on the verge, and she's being chased by the monster in its dimension after trying to find where a dying deer had been dragged to. Jonathan's frantically trying to find her and discovers, he's calling out to her. She doesn't really know where she is, and I have to say the acting in this scene really was fantastic. I think both actors did a very good job. I can't really think of their name right now, but they both were so great in this scene, and you really do see their connection. I mean, even though a lot of people are saying, oh, it's kind of predictable what's happened to them, it makes sense why those two are connecting and why they need to kind of be together in this sense. I thought Natalia Dyer and Charlie Heaton, they both did a great job in the scene, especially Natalia Dyer. She did a very good job at making it seem like she was just deadly terrified out of her life. And, most of it was just them saying, Nancy, Jonathan, just calling out for each other. You could tell the desperation in them, and I thought that was so well done. And basically, he's frantically trying to find her, discovers a slowly closing tree where Nancy has crawled into, and Nancy, in the meantime, is trying to escape from the monster. And we figure that, of course, the sudden sounds can catch it off guard. As we know, that's the only thing that can get the monster to go away once they hear something. But the sound of Nancy's breathing doesn't seem to register for some reason. And whether it's due to the actual volume pitch or the breathing, we're not really sure. However, even as it's right near her, she managed to run a 20-foot feat, so the tree portal, without it noticing her. And luckily, Nancy does, in fact, survive the encounter with the monster. And I thought that was such a great scene. I love the way that was done. I mean, for a while, you don't know if this is actually going to work, if she's actually going to be able to get away. And I love that. I thought that was a fantastic way to start things out. And really does show, I think set up how great this episode is, because this episode's really about characters that need each other, and what do these characters benefit? Like, what does Nancy get from Jonathan? Why does she need to be with Jonathan? Why do the boys need 11? And why does Joyce need Hopper? I think those are the 3 key relationships that we definitely do explore in this episode, and they're explored really, really well. I really did love the way that was done, and I thought in general that was a fantastic way to start things out. I really did love that, I have to say. And just in general, the way that started out, I thought was fantastic. I love the way that was done. And like I said, to me, I think the best opening the show has done since the premiere by far. But the other thing I will credit this episode for is getting me to like a character that I've hated this entire season. You guys know I've really liked all the characters except for Steve. I've hated Steve this entire season. Why? He seems extremely shallow, extremely cliche, and just a dick. It seems like he's only there to create drama with Nancy. It doesn't really seem like he's a full-fledged character. This episode, however, I think they actually humanized him pretty well. I think they did a good job. Is he a good guy? No, I don't think they showed that, but he does care for Nancy, and that's something I like that we did see here. He's with his friends at night. They're all in a car. They're listening to the song on the radio, and his friends are egging him on, and they're basically trying to make him think that there's something going on with Nancy, and he's wondering why he's with Nancy in the first place and why he's chasing after her. And I thought this was a really good scene. I did like the way this was done because it's a good question. Why is he chasing after her? Because to them, this was just a fling. They basically tell him, look, it's a one-night stand. That's all it needs to be. Steve doesn't want that, though. He actually cares for her well-being, and that's something I did like seeing. It's something that I really didn't expect from Steve, but I thought was very well done. We see, he goes to her window. Unfortunately, at the exact wrong time, there she is with Jonathan, and I thought it was a really well done, showing how far we've come, because of course the show started out with Jonathan being the outlooker and Nancy and Steve being together, but now it seems like things have reversed, and I thought it was really well done. I really love that scene. You see that he generally does care. He's upset. He really, as we know, does not like Jonathan. Jonathan's known as a social outcast, but also because he generally does care for Nancy, and I think he really does want to be with her, and even though he is shallow, and, he is kind of stupid at points, and he, obviously kind of just wanted for sex, he originally just wanted her for sex initially, and that was it. I think he's kind of started to really care about her, and I don't think he understands fully what that means. And I thought that was a very well done scene. I really did love that, and just little things like that worked very well in this episode. You had a character like Steve, like I said, who I don't really think could have been redeemed, and they redeemed him very well here. I think they really did show Steve's a good guy. He's not really a bad guy necessarily. What he does in this episode, I think he goes way too far with, but I think this scene in general, they definitely were trying to redeem him. You definitely do see, and that's something I definitely really did enjoy. So we go, and also I forgot to say, Nancy and Jonathan go back to her house, and Steve doesn't really know what's going on there. He's thinking, of course, that Jonathan probably just wants to have sex with Nancy, and that's something else I liked. He's not just there to have sex with her. He genuinely wants to know what's going on, because obviously he's concerned about her, and I like I said, I thought that was a well-done scene. But anyways, we go back to Hawkins, and Joyce is obviously very fired up and about what happened, and Hopper's cold sober, and he describes the laboratory and what we know to be 11's cell, and talking to her about, what happened with the bed he found, and I like the way they're starting to find out about 11, because those are the only two characters that don't really know a ton about 11, and I like that we did see that here. I like the bonding they had in this scene. I thought that was very well done, and I've always really liked Joyce and Hopper's scenes here. I think Winona Ryder and David Harbour just had very good chemistry, and you definitely do see that here, and I really did enjoy that. But he's describing 11's bed and not Will's, because Will was a great artist, and these were nothing but stick figures. So he knows definitely that this wasn't Will's. It had nothing to do with that. And Hopper now thinks to himself that he may have found another missing kid while looking for Will. And finally, we get that scene in the trailer where he says, I spent all this time looking for Will, but maybe I just found someone else. Because we have to remember that 11 is missing. 11 is a missing kid. 11 is someone that went on the run. 11's also someone that Brenner took. Brenner stole her, if you remember. And we find out more about that in this episode, and that's something I definitely really did like. And like I said, I like that they're starting to find out more about 11, and I like that they're starting to realize more what's going on there. I thought it was a very well done scene. Really did like that, and that's something I definitely really did enjoy. So Nancy's showering off the dark goo we see, and I love the fear in her in this scene. Just her being deathly terrified of what's on her. And Jonathan puts a sleeping bag on the floor, tells her what I love about Jonathan in this scene is how different he is than Steve. And the difference between Jonathan and Steve is that Steve, as we know, Steve is someone that, again, initially just wanted her for sex. And while, like I said, he does care for her, he isn't like Jonathan. Jonathan's someone that doesn't just want her for sex. Jonathan's someone that doesn't just want to be. Unlike Steve, says that he'll sleep in a bed. He's not even going to sleep near Nancy. He's going to sleep on the floor, and Nancy, out of fear, tells him to sleep with her. And I thought it was a good scene because they're not doing it for sexual reasons or even for love reasons. She's terrified, and she just needs someone to be with her. And I really do like seeing that. I thought that was a very well done scene. But something I think this episode illustrates very well is why, how Nancy, while Jonathan feels these feelings for Nancy, Nancy does not feel the same about Jonathan. She sees Jonathan as someone to get close to, and I think someone who will protect her, but she doesn't really see him as a love interest, and I think we definitely see that here, which I think is interesting. And, they basically end up sleeping together, but it's not like a sexual reason. It's because of the fact, like I said, that she was scared, and I thought that was a very well done scene. I really did like the way that was done, and that's something I really did enjoy. I liked their chemistry throughout the episode, and I loved Karen going into Nancy's bedroom and her having to come with this lie and say that she was getting dressed. I thought that was a well-done scene. They decide to sneak out through the window because they realize that if they're going to fight this monster, they need the proper weapons. Obviously, they feel that they're equipped to do so. They went through all the training in the last episode. They feel they need to face this monster, they need to fight it, and they're going to do whatever they can to do so. So that's their basic mission in this episode. Meanwhile, we see Mike and Lucas and Dustin. They're going through a lot of stuff because obviously Lucas was hurt, and I like that Mike apologized to Lucas at the urging of Dustin, who tells Mike that best friends have to make up, because at first Mike was kind of hesitant to, but Dustin was able to convince him, which I did like seeing, telling him that, best friends have to make up, and you can't just be against each other, and that's something I really did like seeing. I like seeing Mike kind of be wary to apologize to Lucas, because, again, the fact that things went really bad between them, he doesn't really know what to do, and I definitely really did like that, but they don't know where 11 has vanished to. They have no idea, and we see this great scene where she's alone in the woods, she slept on the ground, and she basically realized in this scene the facade's over. And what I mean by the facade is her wig. Her wig of her going to be that normal little girl that she's wanted to be and actually look like a girl and things like that. She takes off the wig and she's ready to show her true colors, because I think she realizes that she has to do something. She needs to show her true self, and she can't keep pretending to be something she's not. And she's sleeping on the ground, strips off the wig, and we then flash back to Brenner telling her she's going to make contact with the monster and that she doesn't need to run away because it's going to hurt her if she does. And I thought that was interesting that we saw that. And again, there's obviously a reason why Brenner wants her to meet with that monster, but we still don't exactly know what that reason was, and I thought that was very interesting that we saw that. Oh, I forgot to say, back in that scene with Nancy and Jonathan, Nancy has this great scene where she's talking about connecting the monster's behavior, and she compares the monster to a shark, to its appearance, wherever blood is spilled, which I thought was very interesting that we saw that, and it also shows that Barb is probably dead, because since her blood was what drew the monster to her, so Barb's probably dead. And Nancy also notes that the monster only really seems to attack at night, suggesting that it's possibly a nocturnal predator. And the fact that Nancy's gaining all this information, I really did like seeing. I like seeing that she actually is very smart. She really does know what she's doing, and I thought that was definitely very well done. I really enjoyed seeing most of that, because obviously Nancy is someone that, like I've said, she's very career driven, she's very focused on gaining information, and I think she did that very well in this episode. I really did like seeing that, but again, her connection to Mike is pure coincidence to her, clearly. She doesn't really want some sort of a relation with him. We'll get into that a little bit later, though. I thought that definitely was interesting that we saw that. But meanwhile, Hopper and Joyce, they've gone to track down Will. That's where they are, and I like this scene where they don't really know where they're going. This leads them to a woman named Terry Ives. Now, if you remember, there was a woman that Brenner, took the child away from, and I think we are to assume that that woman was Terry Ives, because Hopper and Joyce, they see Terry clearly in a catatonic state. She doesn't really talk to anyone, and she only sits in front of a TV and she doesn't talk. Now, the reason is we don't know, but Terry's sister explains that Terry was a subject in Brenner's testing, and she'd take LSD and get into sensory deprivation tank to expand the mind. So we don't really know what that's about, but Terry didn't know, but she was pregnant at the time and was told she had a miscarriage in her third trimester, and Terry believes her daughter will come back and have special abilities, which we know actually did happen. So the question is, I'm pretty sure that Brenner lied to her. Obviously, she did have this child. Obviously, 11 is her daughter, we realize, and I love the way that they find out about 11 via this one conversation. This was a very well done scene, and again, like I said, I really do like that they're starting to find out more about 11 just through little things like this. I thought it was really well done, really did enjoy that, and that's something I definitely really did like here. So we then get this awesome scene with 11 that I absolutely loved. Like I said, one of my favorite parts of the season has been 11's powers and the extent of what she can do, and this scene, no different. She goes into this grocery store, and she's just there in the grocery store. Everyone's wondering where she is, and she literally takes, I think, about 6 boxes of Eggo waffles and just walks out without paying for them or anything. Nobody seems to, I mean, everyone seems to care. She doesn't really seem to care that anyone is following her. This guy's running after her, of course, asking why she did this, saying she needs to pay for those, and she literally breaks the sliding glass doors with her powers, which I thought was awesome, and it basically leaves a trail for Dustin and Mike to hopes, of tracking her down, because I think she wants to prove them right. Obviously, she's raw on them after the attack on Lucas, and she wants to, well, not the attack, but the injury on Lucas, and she wants to show them that, hey, you can trust me. I'm not someone that's going to wrong you, and I thought that was a very well done scene. I really did like that, and definitely one of the key things here. So, Jonathan and Nancy then have this great scene where they purchase weapons for monster hunting. I love the guy that was in the shop, because you could tell he was wondering why the stuff they were getting were like axes and poison and things. Like, he was wondering why they had all this stuff before they can go back into the woods. We see in an alley, basically they are walking and they see this car, and it tells them to, and it says, "We hope you enjoy the movie." And we see on the marquee, it says Nancy the Slut is the movie they're going to be showing, and obviously, this really pisses Nancy off because, of course, what she did with Jonathan has nothing to do with her being a slut, but everyone's calling her a slut now. Steve basically tells her that she's going to be slut-shamed, and this is where Steve is different from Jonathan. Steve isn't as protective. He's someone that cares about her, but if she wrongs him, then it's kind of hard, and I think Jonathan's someone that's different. Steve confronts Jonathan and Nancy about them sleeping together, and Nancy tries to explain that it isn't what it looks like, but Steve isn't willing to listen. Now, I'm gonna say right now, I don't think Steve was the one that wrote the thing on the marquee. I think his friends did it, and he went along with it to prove a point to her. But he doesn't seem to listen. He thinks he knows what he's doing. He thinks he has it all figured out, that they're a couple and everything, and they get into this huge fist fight where Jonathan just beats the living shit out of Steve, and I thought that was such a well done scene, just showing, and I love the way that Steve was trying to egg Jonathan on, with him threatening things like saying, "Oh, you're as bad as your father, you're a scrib like your father, you're a social outcast like everyone says you are," and I love that Jonathan just got in his face, he punched him out, and he actually ends up going to jail, and I thought that was a very well done scene, but I think the most important part of that scene is the scene that Nancy has with the police chief, because the policewoman says to her that a boy will only do that for a girl he loves, and Nancy's like, "What are you talking about?" Because she doesn't think of Jonathan that way. She didn't think Jonathan thought of her that way, but now she's starting to think that maybe she does like him, and this is something that I think might concern her, because I think she doesn't really see him as someone she likes, but I think they are inexplicably going to get together, and I think that's definitely something we're seeing here. Is the timing right? No, the timing is not right, and I'm going to say right now, I think one of them is going to get killed off before anything can happen between those two. I think it's probably going to be Nancy. I could really see her getting killed off at the end of this season, especially because of the monster, but we'll have to see what happens with that. Or Jonathan, but he's in jail right now. He does get out of jail, luckily. She is able to confront him, and they do arrest Jonathan, but she sees him again. I thought that was a well-done scene. Definitely really did like that. But then we get to the climax of this episode, which I absolutely loved. I love this last scene because while trying to find the gates of the Upside Down, Lucas rides his bike. He finds that true north lies within Hawkins' laboratory, and before Lucas is able to tell Mike and Dustin what he found, they're about to go there. The two boys are cornered on a cliff by Troy. Yes, Troy, the boy that Eleven made pee his pants and everything. And he definitely has an axe to grind. You can definitely tell, because Troy taunts Dustin, literally points a switchblade at Dustin, and he says straight out to Dustin that if you don't jump off this cliff, that he says to Mike, if you don't jump off this cliff, then I'm going to make more of Dustin's teeth go away. He threatens Mike that he will cut Dustin's remaining teeth if Mike doesn't jump in the lake, and it's really a crazy scene to watch. I mean, I really didn't know what was going to happen here, but I think it really shows us how different bullying was then, because a lot of people have talked about how 80s bullies are a lot more threatening and just a lot more scary and just go a lot more farther. And it's because we didn't have things like the internet and things like that. The internet, now it's just insults, and nowadays you don't see a lot of fist fights and things like that. You do, but not as much as you did in the 80s, and I think it's something they showed well here, is how bullying was in the 80s, and that's something I think the show has just done really well. And I love Mike's contemplation, because at the same time, while he does want to help his friend, he also could die. I mean, this could be the fall of his life if he does that, and you don't really know what he's going to do here, which I really did love seeing. But we see this flashback where Eleven succeeds in making contact with the monster. She touches the monster's back, but the monster turns around as Eleven screams for her life, so we don't really know what's going to happen with that. But in the end, Mike does end up jumping off the cliff and into the lake, but suddenly he freezes in midair and he levitates back to safety. And you can tell, obviously, this was Eleven's doing. They do, in fact, find Eleven. Eleven appears on the road. She used her power to break Troy's arm before he can cut Dustin's teeth. And as the bullies run away, I love this scene with Eleven and Mike, because Eleven says, I'm the monster, I'm the one that caused all this, you should blame me. She's basically, I think, ready to leave Mike. I think she honestly was ready to just say, alright, I'm a monster, I accept it, let's just move past this. And I love that Mike comforts her, saying she isn't the monster because she saved him and she wanted to help their friends, and in the end she did do something. And I really do love the scene where Dustin says, that's our friend, she's crazy, but she's our friend. I thought that was a lot of fun that we saw that, and it ends with them hugging each other. Dustin joins in, really, I think, just uniting those three, really showing how important that relationship is, showing that they can trust Eleven, showing that Eleven does care about them, and I think really iterating the power of friendship on this show. I mean, friendship is one of the key components of this entire series, and teamwork, and especially with someone like Eleven, who is there to help them. She is, I think, going to show them the way to will, and I think definitely she is someone that they need. Obviously, she's someone that can help them fight off bullies. She's someone that can help them find will, and she's also going to be, I think, the person to unite this friendship and keep this friendship intact, which I definitely really did like. Thought that it was a very well done scene. Great way to end the episode overall, especially after this episode. I thought it was just a great way to end. It was a fantastic character-driven episode. Absolutely loved it, and really made me excited for the last two episodes. So overall, guys, I absolutely love this episode. I'm going to tell you right now why. Because the title of this episode is called The Monster. Now, yes, we are talking about the actual monster that's out there, which, of course, we have seen. It's pretty terrifying. But I think the episode's really talking about the personal monsters that everyone's facing. Like the Steves or the Troys. Those are the characters we're really talking about, and the characters having to fight them off. And people like Jonathan or Eleven are people that these characters need. Nancy needs Jonathan in her life. Eleven, Mike, Lucas, and Dustin, they need Eleven in their life. And I think that's something we showed very well here. But let's talk about Mike, Eleven, and Lucas and Dustin, because can Eleven really show them the way to Will, what's she gonna do for them, where are they headed? We don't really know what's gonna happen with that, because obviously she does know the way to Will. It's not that she doesn't know the way, but we'll have to see what happens with that. I think that's definitely gonna be interesting to see where all that goes, and I don't really know what's gonna happen with that, but I did think that was a very interesting scene. I like the way that Eleven was able to protect them, and I like that we saw that Eleven really is there to help them. I thought it was very well done. Really enjoyed that overall. Definitely my favorite parts of the episode. But actually, probably my favorite aspect of this episode is Nancy and Jonathan, because I think it really reiterated those two as a relationship, and is this actually going to work? Do they actually have a future together? And I think we saw at the end of this episode that no, they definitely don't. I mean, as much as Jonathan loves Nancy, I don't think cares as much about Jonathan. I think she kind of just sees Jonathan as kind of someone who is a partner, or someone that's going to help her, or someone that's there to help her find something. Her main mission is to find Barb. That's what she wants to do. She wants to find Barb. She doesn't really want anything romantically with Jonathan, but I think he does with her. And like I said, I think something is going to end up happening here before these two can actually get together. I think that definitely is going to happen, but we'll have to see what happens with that. That's going to be interesting. That's not the biggest part of this, obviously. It's not will Nancy and Jonathan get together. It's more of, are these two really compatible for each other? Can these two be together? Is there a future? I mean, we don't really know. I think it's definitely interesting how that storyline's going. And then the other thing I like was Joyce and Hopper. They are pretty much this close to finding Eleven and figuring out more about her. And I feel like very quickly everything's going to intertwine. I think people are going to start meeting up with each other. Like, Nancy's going to meet up with Joyce. I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to go. I mean, obviously, now she's with Jonathan. I would assume she's going to, meet Joyce and things like that, but we'll have to see where that goes, because obviously now that they know of 11, I don't really know what's going to happen here. I think that definitely is going to be very interesting to see if they do meet 11, what's going to happen with that. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how that whole scene turns out and what ends up happening there. I definitely really did like that. Steve, I think, is getting killed. I really do think that Steve is probably going to get killed off by the end of the season, because I think they've really used his character the best they could. I think they've done everything they can do with him. If they do anything more, it's going to jeopardize me liking his character, because like I said, they kind of got me to understand his character here. Is he someone that's a good guy? No, he very easily gives into peer pressure, and he very easily gives into these people he's hanging out with, but he's not nearly as bad as them. He clearly does care about Nancy. He doesn't just want to bone her and then be done with it. There's definitely more to it than that. I think, like I said, initially that was his mission, but I think we do see that he generally does care about her, and that's something I really did like seeing. Also, the monster, I think we're really starting to see Eleven's connection to the monster. The fact she thinks she is the monster, I think is very interesting that we saw all that. The fact that she thinks that she herself is the monster. We know, obviously, 11 isn't a monster. We know she's seen this monster before. But she's dealt with it, and obviously it scares her, and we don't really know what the monster wants with her, but obviously I think there's something he definitely wants with her, and it definitely seems like he's working with Brenner. It seems like Brenner knows of this monster. He knows the monster's capable of, so what's going to happen there? I think that overall is very interesting. And then as far as Terry Ives are, how are Nancy and Hopper going to deal with this situation? I mean, Joyce and Hopper, how are they going to deal with this situation? Because obviously, everyone seems to think that it's a lie. In fact, the woman that was staying with her says that she's crazy, but they know that there's definitely possible. It's possible there could be an 11 out there. I think they're going to go looking for her, but we'll have to see what happens with that. Overall, guys, absolutely love this episode. This is everything I love about the show. I think really came to a halt in this episode. I love it. They ended certain plot threads. We have 2 episodes left, and I am so ready to see what ends up happening. I heard the next episode's like an action movie, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how episode 7 is, and then hopefully I'll be able to watch the last 2 episodes tomorrow. That's my hope, at least. But let me know what you guys thought about this episode. Love to your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for this week of Big Brother, and which, again, the only reason is because of that ridiculous episode they had tonight, which I will be talking about because it was stupid. But other than that, I will be talking about Big Brother, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.